Now, recently, Dr. Cologne put out a longer version of an interview he conducted with Felipe Luciano that appeared in his propaganda video, The Latin Breakdown. So I used to have a lot of respect for Felipe in the past. I found him to be credible, articulate, and very knowledgeable on a variety of topics. But however, this interview that he apparently had with Dr. Cologne caused me to question whether he knowingly indulged in untruthful claims regarding the Latin influence in African American music. So if you haven't seen the interview yet, think about this. The so-called Puerto Rican influence was never mentioned. He only spoke to what he believed were Cuban influences in our music culture, and some of those claims were outlandish. So let's talk about some of those claims.
Do the Latin sounds of the Palladium during the time of Mambo have an influence on the African American bands that have these Latin breakdowns in their songs?
Yes, they did. They did. It started really in New Orleans with Louis Armstrong and the Hot Five, with the bands that were operating in that area. Louis Armstrong says it's a Latin tinge. Had it not been for Sidney Bechet says this too. Had it not been for the Cuban musicians coming across the Gulf of Mexico, jazz would have had a different tinge. It would have been very linear. It was the Latin tinge, if you will. John Storm Roberts has a book called The Latin Tinge. It would have been very different had it not had that influence. Congo Square was as much a Latino square as it was an African American square. Remember that the Latinos who came here were much closer to the African matrix than were even the African Americans who were here.
Now, did y'all catch that? He said Louis Armstrong came up with the term the Latin tinge. Clearly, that was wrong. Now, maybe he misspoke. I mean, everybody can make a mistake, but you notice Dr. Cologne didn't correct him on that. Why would he allow that to be in this particular interview, knowing that that was wrong? Now, I talked about this in one of the videos I did on the Latin Breakdown, my rebuttal series. Now, to say, again, I'm going to just talk about it again real quick. Now, we know for a fact that there were no Latinos at Congo Square. This is a myth. And so I'm embarrassed for Felipe for even mentioning that. These people were African slaves. The use of the word Latino would suggest to many that there was an abundance of mixed race people who was part of this cultural expression. And that clearly wasn't the case.
Anyway, the rap music, bebop, is in fact influenced in a lot of ways by Latin music. The timbales, first of all. Every time I hear a timbale lick on an American record, be it black or white, I get annoyed because it's not really doing it. It's not counterpunching. I think all black musicians, I think all black people, but all black should definitely listen to Latin music. Definitely. And I think conversely, all Latin musicians should be listening to black music. You cannot play Latin music if you don't know the blues. How are you going to do this? You got to play the blues. You got to know what the blues is. You got to know what the field shouts out in the hollers. When you do that, you're coming close to the vein, the gut bucket bottom of our people. Good rap music, good house music always has that. And yes, we owe a great deal of gratitude to Latin music for A, the timbales, the bongos that they play.
What is he talking about? In what world is one would actually believe that Latin music influenced rap?
Question to you is, the last poets, were they influenced by Latin, African sounds, rhythms, course, I would say yes, but I want to hear from you.
Let me explain to you how deep it was. Our first drummer was a guy named Elijah, who was versed and steeped in the tradition of Santeria, of Latin music, of the blues, and of jazz. If he didn't believe in your poems, if he was listening to your poem and you didn't believe him, he wouldn't take out his drums. He had them in duffel bags. He wouldn't take out his drums. He played Caribbean rhythms when we were doing it. Doom ta, doom doom ta, doom ta, doom ta.
Be it far from me to question Felipe on this particular topic, but I do question whether or not there was a Latin influence, as he tries to suggest when he mentions Santeria, among other things. So let's understand the beginnings and the origin of the last poets have nothing to do with Latin culture. And I think the reason why Felipe does this is to try to show a Latin connection. And that's just not the case. So let me read this particular article from the Britannica.com. And this is what it says. The last poets formed in Harlem in New York City, originating as a trio of poets composed of Nelson, Ayewale, and Kane, who shared an interest in developing a new black nationalist poetry to respond to the assassinations of Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. Nelson's vision was to present an image of black unity and to expose the black community's enemies and oppressors. So this is what we're talking about. This organization or this group was developed out of the Black Arts Movement in order to bring attention to the plight of black people in America. Not Latinos, but black people. So this is started by black people for black people.
Was there, Marlon Brando was there, Sammy Davis Jr. was there. You name the star and they went to hear Machito the Canadian. That's how powerful his band was. And he had a mixture of Puerto Ricans, Cubans, and black folk there. And if he had two people who were very important in combining and defining the music. One was called Mario Bausa, who was the band leader. He had already played with Chick Webb's band. He was the lead trumpet there. I should add that he was the one who discovered Ella Fitzgerald and sent Ella Fitzgerald to Chick Webb's band.
Now we know that Ella Fitzgerald really started her career singing with Chick Webb, but we also know that you were the one who really discovered Ella Fitzgerald.
No, I didn't discover.
Okay, what happened with that?
She was in the amateur contest in the Harlem Opera House.
Okay.
So now when I came to work in the morning to the first show in the Apollo Theater, the was working. The fellow that worked backstage told me, Mario, it's a lady. They won the first prize yesterday. This is what you need in this band. So I said, would you come around and introduce it to me? So the lady came by, and I took her to the rehearsal room downstairs with the piano player, and I flipped. And I run to Chick. I said, Chick, I found a diamond in the rough. So who is it? I said, I can bring it to you. Bring the lady. So he looked at her, she was a young kid, don't have a hell of appearance, but she sang wonderful. So he said to me, what are we going to do with this? I said, we close here tomorrow, and we got to play the proms on Yale University. Let's take it. I said, we didn't prepare nothing. I said, don't worry, let me worry about that. So we took that lady over there, and that was that.
And that was a big...
So there you have it. So Mario Bowser basically shuts down this myth that he discovered Ella Fitzgerald.
We also believe in holding our partners when we dance. It was a very different era. So now black and white musicians come in and see people dancing rumba, for example, which was the original breakdancing. I don't know why people think that this came out of nowhere. Rumba is doing all the stuff that they're doing today, rumba was doing in Havana.
So this is the dance that Felipe said breakdancing originates from, the rumba. Come on, Felipe. Stop the madness. Come on.
And so, not to mention scatting. Miguelito Valdez, one of the great singers, he was the original Babalu, was scatting long before rap came in. So we think that Ella Fitzgerald, who Mario Bauza introduced to the Chick Webb Band, we think, this is just a historical supposition, that she probably heard Miguelito Valdez and Mario Bauza introduced, because she was, it's scatting. But we do that. We were doing that in Cuba long before it was discovered here. Long before. There are amazing connections. Now, getting back to the contemporary.
Now, before I show you the difference between what Miguelito did and what Ella Fitzgerald did, let's go over the definition of what scat singing is. Originating in vocal jazz, scat singing or scatting is a vocal improvisation with wordless vocables, nonsensical syllables, or without words at all. In scat singing, the singer improvised melodies and rhythms using the voice solely as an instrument rather than a speaking medium. This is different from vocalese, which uses recognizable lyrics that are sung to pre-existing instrumental solos. All right, so you're going to hear when Miguelito sings as, well, I guess what Felipe refers to scatting, which is not. He's basically making percussive noises. They're not done in a melodic sense. And the key word in this definition is melody. All right? Let's listen. So you get the idea. Now, as you listen to this, you'll hear a totally different feel altogether. Now you see all that movement going on? Miguelito don't do nothing like that. To try to suggest that he was the inspiration for Ella is totally ridiculous. Listen to this by Jelly Roll Morton.
Oh, I was singing some scat songs. That was way before Louis Armstrong's time. By the way, scat is something that a lot of people don't understand, and they begin to believe that the first scat numbers was ever done was done by one of my hometown boys, Louis Armstrong. But I must take the credit away since I know better. The first man that ever did a scat number in history of this country was a man from Vicksburg, Mississippi, by the name of Joe Sims, an old comedian. And from that, Tony Jackson and myself and several more graduated in New Orleans, and found it was pretty good for an introduction of the song.
What does scat mean?
Scat doesn't mean anything but just something to give a song a flavor. For instance, we'll say, scat, ski, ski, doo-doo-doo, ski, scout, scoot, doo-doo-doo, ski, let go, beat-it, doo-doo-doo, squat up, squat up, squat it, let's beat-it, doo, beat-it, bottle-it, blood-it, bottle-it, oh, scooty-doo, scooty-doo, yes, scooty-doo, scooty-doo, oh, scooty-doo, scooty-doo, oh, scooty-doo, just squat up, scooty-doo, scooty-doo, yeah.
So Jelly Roll Morton clearly says it comes from Black American culture, scatting. It doesn't come from Cuba. Stop the madness. I want to re-emphasize something I said earlier in this video. Felipe did not mention what were the Puerto Rican influences in Black American music or even hip hop. What he spoke to was what he believed Cuba culture contributed to Black American music. So my issue is, what is the reason for even having Felipe in the documentary if he's not going to bring some light as to what the Puerto Ricans did? So for me, it was a waste of time. And unfortunately for Felipe, he revealed in this video or in the documentary that he's not that knowledgeable about music. Unfortunately, he may be a lover of music, but he's not knowledgeable about music. So, with that being said, thumb up the video, subscribe, share. Until the next time, peace.